everybody, welcome back to my channel. Now, in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my official book recommendations as of right now. So it is May 2024, and I thought it would be fun to film this video maybe once a year, or at the beginning of a year, at the end of the year, something like that to kind of keep my recommendations up and going. I thought it would be fun to start out with my recommendations as of right now. Maybe you guys are in a little bit of a book slump and maybe you guys need some recommendations. I'm going to be talking about all different types of books, different genres, and I'm also going to be including YA books as well. Books with spice, without spice, kind of like letting you guys know, and kind of like age ratings as well. So starting with the very first category, we are going to be starting with fantasy / dystopian. So these kind of can all fall under fantasy, romance, adventure, kind of stuff like that. It's just all pretty much chopped. I just kind of put it all into the fantasy category. So let's go ahead and get started with my adult fantasy recommendations. Now, the first books I'm going to be recommending is, I'm sure you guys have seen and heard about these books before. It is Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros. Now, Fourth Wing took last year over by storm. I'm pretty sure it was around this time when this book released. This book is about Violet, and you are following her as she is going into this college that once you turn 21, you can pick 4 quadrants, and she is going into the writer's quadrant. Now, I can't really talk too much about Iron Flame without you guys kind of reading Fourth Wing, so I'm not going to talk too much about Iron Flame, but this book does have romance and it does have spice. Both books actually do. Personally, one of the things that I disagree with about this series is that there is a love triangle. I wouldn't say it's a true love triangle, so I'm not going to agree that it has that trope. There is definitely more than one person, love interest wise, but it's not really a true love triangle. So I don't agree with that when people use it to describe this series. So that's kind of my disagreement with the book community. There is spice. Now, this is actually a series that is still continuing to come out. Rebecca Yarros announced that the 3rd book is coming out in January, Onyx Storm. So this is a part of an ongoing series. So if you are someone who likes to only read series once all the books are published, I wouldn't recommend it. I would probably wait a little bit longer. The side characters are really amazing. I love the banter with the side characters, and I really enjoy kind of the actual story about the mother and daughter relationship, the sister relationship, and just friendships in general, and how friendships can change. This is definitely a romantasy. There is romance as the forefront, but it also has so much more to that. Now, about Iron Flame, like I said, I can't really go into too much detail about this book without you guys reading the first one. I know if you have thought about reading the series, a lot of people say that Iron Flame wasn't good or it was a big letdown. I don't agree with that. I actually thoroughly enjoyed Iron Flame, probably just the tiniest bit less than Fourth Wing. I loved both of the books. I loved the growth with the characters in this book, and this book is 100% setting up for the 3rd one. This one is a bit more information heavy. It is more kind of telling you, kind of setting the stage for the 3rd book. Now let's get into some YA fantasy recommendations. Now, number 1, I have Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. Now, this is actually a trilogy. There are 3 books. It is completed. There is no spice in this book. This book is a very much so magical fairy tale romance. It is definitely a love triangle, we are following Evangeline, who is the main character, and she is in love with her very first boyfriend. She's in love with him, and something happens where her boyfriend, like her childhood lover, is marrying her stepsister, and she goes to this church. It's a fae church where Jax pretty much lives, and prays to him to kind of stop the wedding from happening. And it kind of spirals down from there. But I do definitely recommend this series for anyone who wants a very fairy tale magical. I recommend this to all ages, even though it's closed door and there's no spice in it. I still think it keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's really true enemies to lovers. Now getting into a dystopian book, we're going to be talking about Frost. Now this book is pretty beat up. This is actually a book I read in middle school. This has been a book that I have read multiple times, and I just love it. I think for me, it's also the comfort of reading this book and kind of bringing me back to when I was really got into reading, which was in my middle school years. Now, this is a dystopian book, and this is actually a really good dystopian book for beginners. If you're kind of teetering on the dystopian vibe, I definitely recommend this one. Now, I will put up the trigger warnings for this book. It is YA, there is no spice. However, it does kind of talk about a few things that I just like to make people aware of. So this book is about how the robots have taken over the world, and Frost is what is the last human girl surviving. Now, Bunt, which is her personal robot, he and her are stranded kind of in this apartment building that her parents and her lived in. This has been multiple years, like after the robots rose and took over, and Frost has a dog, and her dog is really sick. She doesn't know if the dog is gonna make it, and she hears these stories about a utopia where all of the humans have ran off to, and they have medicine, and she is trying to travel across this land to get her and her dog to this utopia. This story is really good. Kind of has some zombies in it too. It's not a pretty violent book, but it does have some violence in it. But this is a true dystopian book. I really enjoy this book. I think it's really fun. It has some like little mini twists and turns, and some stuff gets unveiled about it. And the ending for this book goes crazy. It is so, like, every single time, I've read this book multiple times, and every single time I read the ending, my jaw is on the floor. I'm still, like, shocked about it, even though how many times I've read this book. The next book is not really a fantasy, but it has some magical aspects, and that is The Garden of Eve by K.L. Going. Now, this book, you are following Eve, and Eve's mom has passed away, and it is her and her dad, and they are moving to this super small town, to this orchard farm that this man left Eve's mom. And so they're moving there, and it kind of follows Eve as she's going through her grief, and while also going through her grief, talking about how she feels like all the magic in her world died, kind of how her mom was a super big believer in fairy tales and happily ever afters and this magical world, and Eve just doesn't really feel it. And then she meets a boy who claims he is a ghost. And Eve is like, very much so, like, no, you're not. And he's like, yes, I am, and I can prove it. And they kind of go on this big adventure together. There's some twists and turns. And now I will go ahead and give a little bit of disclaimer about this book. This book also kind of, the magical aspect on it is kind of focused on Christianity, and kind of some stories of the Bible, so that if that's something that you are interested in or not interested in, that is kind of a theme in this book. That's kind of where they pull the magic from. So I just kind of like making sure everyone knows that. Again, Closed door, absolutely no spice, no romance at all. Alrighty, so now we are going to be talking about some romance books. Now, I thought it would be fun to talk about some Kindle Unlimited romance books and some romance series that I absolutely love on my Kindle. So the very first one is the Vancouver Storm series. It is the Behind the Net and the Fake Out by Stephanie Archer. Now, this series, these are hockey romances. The first book is Jamie and Pippa, and they are childhood best friends. They went to the same school, and one day Pippa winds up being Jamie's assistant, and they're reconnecting after school, and it's kind of following their romance. The Fake Out is actually following Rory and Hazel. Hazel and Pippa are sisters, and Rory and Jamie are best friends. And it is a spicy romance series. I absolutely love the writing. I love the characters. It's such a great vibe of a story. It's so good. Their romance in the books definitely feels real. There's definitely an emotional connection in both of the books and not just a physical connection, which I always appreciate. It is such an incredible series, and the third book is actually coming out this year, The Wingman, and this is an ongoing series as well on Kindle Unlimited. I absolutely love The Fake Out and Behind the Net. The Fake Out is my personal favorite between the two, but I absolutely love this series, and like I said, it's on Kindle Unlimited. Now, for the rest of these romances, none of the romances that I have are YA or closed door romances, so just kind of a FYI. So the next book I have is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Now, this book actually is a new book that I recently just read, and if the tabs don't tell you, I will. I absolutely adored this book. I loved the story. It had some magical realism in it, and I love both of the characters. I actually love all the characters in this book. It talks so heavily about how much time can change a person and how so much can happen in what you may think is a long time but is actually just a short amount of time. And I absolutely love and adore this book, and I love the male main character because they kind of reminded me of my fiance a little bit. So that was kind of sweet and special to me because their mannerisms were kind of the same. Obviously, it's not going to be like that for all of you, but I just thought it was super cute. Next, we have probably what I would argue with anyone is one of the best book ever written, in my humble opinion, which is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, I talk about Emily Henry quite a bit. She is one of probably my #1 favorite author of all time. Emily Henry is one of the authors that when you read her writing, you can very much so tell that she was born to be an author. Now, this book you are following January and Gus, and January and Gus are both in the book world. They are both authors. January is a fun romance author, while Gus is more of a realistic kind of fiction, literary fiction author, and they both end their books in like complete opposite ways. And this story is so incredibly amazing. It's actually getting turned into a movie, which I am so excited about. The quotes in this book, like, wow. I absolutely love this book. I love everything about it. They kind of strike up a deal between the two of them, and you definitely see their kind of love grow. This book is my all-time favorite book for a reason, and I quote this book in my head all the time, and I relate so many things back to this couple, and I absolutely love and adore this book. I genuinely recommend any Emily Henry books. I absolutely love her writing, but if you were like, what's the #1 Emily Henry book I should read? Beach Read, 100%. Now I'm going to be talking about some thriller and horror books that I absolutely love and adore. So number one, we are going to be talking about The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I did not guess any of the plot twists. And this book is a then and now timeline. It mainly focuses on then. You don't really get super heavy into the now timeline until later in the book, but this book is absolutely amazing. You are following Casey. Her life has just kind of fallen apart, and she retreats to this old cabin that they stayed at when she was a kid. Now she's living there. She's trying to take a break from everything going on in her life, and there is a house across the lake where it's kind of a glass house. The view of their house is completely glass, and you can see right through it. Casey starts noticing some weird kind of stuff going on. Now, that's all I'm going to say about this. Absolutely love going into thrillers completely blind. So I'm not really going to tell you guys too much about it. You guys can definitely read the back of the book, but I'm definitely a big supporter in going into thriller books blind. I feel like they're more fun, and I feel like the back of a book can kind of spoil quite a bit that's gonna happen in the book. This was such a fun read. I flew through this book. I literally completely forgot I was a person. I was just so enwrapped in the story. And Riley Sager, the way he like painted the picture, it wasn't super detailed, but it also just didn't breeze past it. Like it was like the perfect amount of detail describing your surroundings, and you truly feel like you're watching a movie and like you're in the book. You're like, oh my gosh, I am the main character and I'm the one going through all these things. It is so amazing, and I highly recommend. Next, for kind of more of a thriller mystery vibe in the YA category, I'm going to be recommending The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, this book, you're following Cassie. It's kind of funny, all the C names. Cassie is a teenager, and she kind of has this like special ability. She's really good into like just reading people and kind of figuring people out. And she gets a guy from the FBI showing up at her job, trying to talk to her about this program that's for kids like her and her age. And they kind of are solving this mystery. This is definitely the perfect way to describe this is Criminal Minds, but make it teenagers. Like, there's profiler, there's super genius, there's, you know, someone who can detect lies. And it definitely, the twist definitely got me. I definitely didn't guess the ending of this book. And typically in YA, like thriller mysteries, I can normally guess it. But this one, I could not. Also, this book is actually a series. There are 4 books and 1 novella. This is just the first book in the series, but the mystery is very contained to this book. So you could just read this book and move on, but it's not like an ongoing mystery. Like, you don't have to read the other 3 to solve the one that's going on in this book, if that makes sense. Finally, we have Girl Stolen by April Henry. Now, this book is actually pretty good. You are following Cheyenne. That is so funny that all 3 of these thriller books I'm recommending, all the main girls' name starts with a C. Maybe that's just a rule that I'm just now figuring out. But you are following Cheyenne, who is a 16-year-old girl who is actually blind. She has a seeing eye dog, and she is really sick. She has pneumonia, and she is in her mom's car in the back seat when her mom ran in to get her prescription, and her car gets stolen, and Cheyenne gets swept away, and the kidnappers had no idea that she was in there and that they were kidnapping. They just thought they were stealing someone's car. You're following the thriller, but it's so much more interesting about the fact that she cannot see. And she is literally proving to them, she's like, I can't tell anyone what you look like because I'm blind. It's fairly quick. I think it's the shortest. It's a very short book. It's 213 pages. It's a very short kind of YA book. A really good story. I really recommend it. Flew through it for me. Last but not least, we are going to get into historical fiction, which is honestly one of the genres that I feel like I don't get a lot of book suggestions about, but I thought it would be fun. So number one, we're going to be talking about The Book Thief. Now, this book is extremely popular. You've probably read this book when you were in middle school or high school or watched the movie. This happens in World War II. You're following Liesel, and she's going through her own kind of journey with her brother passing away. And she is in this family, and her foster family actually takes in a Jewish man and is hiding them from the Nazis. And she's kind of showing her perspective at such a young age, kind of what she's going through with World War II and how she feels and how it's going. This book is amazing, but this book is well over 500 pages. 549 pages. Also a movie, and the movie is also really good. Next, I'm going to be talking about Someone Named Ava by Joan M. Wolfe. Now, this book is about Mulata, and Mulata is one of the children that actually gets stolen from her family and gets turned into Hitler's children. Kids getting, blonde hair, blue eyes, certain kind of builds, and they are getting stolen from their countries regardless of whether or not they are Jewish or not, and are getting sent out to these perfect families and to become Hitler's perfect race. Now, this book is extremely heartbreaking and extremely hard, and it does talk about a lot of touchy, kind of sensitive subjects. It talks about her story and how she's getting forced into turning into someone that she's not, and she's having a super hard time trying to remember where she's from, who she truly is, and what matters to her, and trying to also survive these schools and trainings and these families, and trying to survive being one of the kids that got kidnapped. Obviously, for historical fiction, these are both talking about World War II, so there is a long list of trigger warnings for both books. So definitely glance over that before you give them a read. Alrighty, everyone. So that is actually going to be it for today's video. Those are my book recommendations as of right now. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books or any books that you guys recommend that I should read. Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTuber stuff every YouTuber tells you guys how to do. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.